Okay, I think we're ready for the next presentation with our dear brother Isaac. You'll come now with our health message this morning.
All right. Good morning and happy Sabbath, everyone. That's good. We could do better. Let's try it again. Good morning and happy Sabbath, everyone. Praise the Lord. You know, let us pray and then dive right into the message for the day. Oh, gentle Savior, hear our humble cry, and while on others thou art calling, do not pass us by. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for your Sabbath. We thank you so much that you are willing to teach us on your day. May you help us to understand that which you would love to teach us on this day. And may you help us by your grace to implement them. In Jesus' name I pray with thanksgiving. Amen. Amen. I love that. All right. So the topic for today is better than wine. Better than wine. But before we actually dive into the message, let us sing with enthusiasm and delight the health song. On 3, 1, 2, 3. Live healthy lives as bad habits we defeat. Let us get exercise to overcome every disease. Let's eat fruits, whole grains, and vegetables, and get plenty sleep. Let us live healthy lives, and let it begin with me. Amen. What a fitting song. All right, again, the title for this message, the health message, is Better Than Wine. We are in the relationship series, and so therefore the topics under this series would have a more relational emphasis. And so, again, the topic is better than wine, and my question, you don't have to raise your hand, please don't, it's embarrassing, but have you ever tasted wine before, right? Talking about good wine, right? Sweet wine, right? All right, confession, I've never tasted wine before, okay? Not that type, right? But have you ever tasted good wine? You know, the Bible has much to say about wine. Psalm chapter 104, verse 15, and you can write that down, but I'm going to read it quickly. It says, He causes the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. Verse 15, and wine that does what? Maketh glad the heart of man. So in the Bible, we find that wine is something that makes glad the heart of man. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 7. Let's have in verse 6. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 6 to 8, I'll read. It says, Give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts. I love verse 7. Verse 7 is where it hits, right? This is interesting. It said, Let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his misery no more, right? So wine is, we are told that wine is something that gladdens the heart. It is something that is a remedy for a heavy heart and something that causes us to forget all our worries. And so my question is, what can be better than wine? What a presumptuous title, right? Better than wine. You mean better than wine? You sure? You know, wine is always that item that is always invited at those festivities and gatherings as a special guest, right? Always there, right? To add flavor and delight, if we could use those words, right? But what can possibly be better than wine? I want you to turn your attention to Songs of Solomon chapter 1, and we're going to read verse 2. What can possibly be better than wine? And when I read this verse, I was like, okay, this is in the Bible? This is actually in the Bible? But yes, it is, right? I know many persons might want to take it out, but it's there, big and bold, right? Songs of Solomon. You know, when I was a child, my parents used to say, my mother in particular, she said, don't read the book of Song of Solomon, right? And you know, being a kid, just because she say don't read it, so let me see what Song of Solomon say, right? And then when I started to read it, it was confusing. I was like, but I know it had a romantic feel, but it was just confusing, right? But this verse, Song of Solomon chapter 1, verse 2, it says, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for what? Thy love is better than wine. Now, of course, if we look at the immediate context of this particular verse, it's definitely a woman speaking to her lover, right? Expressing with great delight and with great gratitude that love that she has, and is inviting the person onto her. And she says something very important, that his love is better to her than even wine itself. That's the local literal application of this text. But I want us to broaden our horizon with this text, right? And let's consider it from a more, from a different point of view, from a more spiritual application, right? We know that the bridegroom in this text and throughout the Bible is Jesus. Isaiah 61 verse 10 bears that out. John chapter 3 verse 29 bears that out. And Luke 5 verse 35 bears that out. We're not going to look at each of them because there's so much to cover today. I'm not going to go through the individual verses of these. But there's much evidence in the Bible, proof text, to make the good case that Jesus is the bridegroom. The bride is the church, according to Ephesians 5 and 25, 2 Corinthians 11 verse 2, and Revelation 19 and 7. You know, when Jesus was on earth, they asked him a question, say, why don't your disciples fast? He said, well, you don't fast when the bridegroom is here, right? You fast when the bridegroom has left. And so he was literally and definitely talking about himself. And when we look at Matthew chapter 25, it talks about how the bridegroom makes the call and they going to come to meet the bridegroom, which is Jesus Christ. The bride is church. Husbands, love your wives as Christ of the church, and he gave himself for it. And Paul says, I've espoused you to Christ as virgins. So we find easily enough that the bride is the church of God and Jesus is the bridegroom or the husband. Now, what is kisses? Because she said that let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. What is kisses in this text, right? When we look in the Bible, kisses is, in a spiritual sense, is a token of mercy and a token of peace. You say, Isaac, what do you mean? When you look at the account in Luke chapter 15, verse 20, with the prodigal son, the father runs to the son, not only hugs him and embraces him, but also what? Kisses him. That kiss is a kiss of peace and a kiss of mercy. I accept you, I honor you, you are welcome, right? So a kiss is a token of peace and mercy. And we find that Jesus did the same thing. Remember at Calvary, right? What happened? That was his kiss to the world, right? That was him bridging the gap. That was him, as it were, bringing us to himself, right? And then wine. She said, for thy love is better than wine. What is wine in the Bible? Isaiah 28, verse 7, Revelation 18, verse 1 to 3, Isaiah 5, 22 to 24, and Matthew 16, verse 6, bears that wine is false doctrine, right? And Sister White says it all too well in Maranatha, page 171, Babylon is fallen because she had made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the question is posed, what is that wine? It's her false doctrine. And so we have, in a spiritual sense, this woman, the church, is telling to Christ, who has welcomed and embraced her, hey, listen, your love, your way, your character, your principles is better to me than wine, than false doctrine. Now, what is one of the many false doctrines that we find that is permeated and distributed throughout the world? Of course, when we look at Revelation chapter 18, that's really talking about the Sabbath issue, right? And that false doctrine and, the immortality of the soul, right? But in a broader sense, there are other doctrines or other perversions or other ways or other counterfeits that Satan has given to us that is actually wine. And one of it, we talked about it yesterday. Not yesterday. Why did I say yesterday? We talked about it last week. And that's this whole thing of dating. This is one of the wines, right? This is a part of that wine that is, or that false doctrine, or that false way, or that wrong way that is given to us when we're very young, and we take it in, and we gobble it up, and we do it. And when I say dating, I'm not talking about dictionary definition. When I say dating, I'm talking about all the perversions that are out there. So in my mind, and in this conversation, when I say dating is the umbrella that harbors all of these mixed up ideologies. The one night stand, the shacking up, the cohabitation, the hooking up, the boyfriend and girlfriend, the going, all of these things which is done without the context of marriage in view is the wine or the confusion that Satan wants us to gobble up. And when this church has given to us this wine, pop culture, right, and entertainment permeates or distributes this same mixed up thing. And many of us have, gotten ourselves mixed up with this same whole dating thing. What is dating? And we talked about this last time. Recreational dating in this particular conversation, it is the pursuit of intimacy for trivial reasons. To entertain oneself, to pass time, for prestige, for honor, for peer pressure, selfish romance, popularity, boredom, lust, infatuation, or for no reason at all. This is a part of the wine or the perverted way that Satan has given to us. And we need to show it for what it really is. And so she says, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. In a spiritual sense, what she is saying is your way, your right way, your principles, your character, your doctrine is better for me. I've found that it's better for me, way better than wine. And in this context that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about something better. Yeah, there is dating, right, that the world does, right? Those perversions, the cohabitation, the shacking up, and all those things that are done without, true godliness in sight. That's the perversion. But the question is, and that's what I did last week, really, call out the perversion for what it is. But you can't just call out the perversion for what it is. You have to present something better. Because she says, hey, I have something that is better than the wine. Okay, they missed that. This is what she's saying. I have something that is better. What is something better? What God has for us. His way. So we talked about Satan's way and his counterfeit. What is God's way? This is taken from Ministry of Healing. She says, it is of little use. Of what? Of little use to try to reform others by attacking what we may regard as wrong habits. And how many of us do that, right? We just go to the person and say, well, you're doing that wrong, and you definitely doing that wrong. And by the way, that is wrong too, and we go about our business. And the person's like, what? What? So what I do, right? You taking away all these things. You're telling me this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, that's that wrong. What do I have? What do I have in replacement? She said, it is of little use to try to reform others by attacking what we regard as wrong habits. Such effort often results in more harm than good. So when you go about just telling people, okay, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, this is not right, this is not this right, this is not right, sometimes that may be more harm than good. So what is the way we should do it? She said what? We must offer men what? Man, I can't hear you. We must offer men what? Something better than which they possess. That is how you do it. Right? So, person have their, non-vegan dessert. So you say, you know what? I see they always having this cake that is poisonous for them, and it's demoralizing their health. So one day you walk in the office and say, you know what? Would you like to try this instead? See the difference now. You're not just saying, hey, remove that, remove that, remove that. You actually give them an alternative. And so that's what we are going to do today. We're going to present something better. So what is better than the demoralizing and the not only demoralizing, but I would say, the wrong application of dating? What is better than that counterfeit? That's probably the better word. What's better than that counterfeit? All right, so the better way is courtship. And I'm going to define what courtship is, because we really need to have or start with a definition of terms, right? Definition of courtship. What do we mean when we say courtship in this conversation? Courtship is, and I want you to read it with me because it's a very deep definition. On 3, 1, 2, 3, it says, courtship is the sincere effort of two to determine if it is God's will that they be married to each other. This is very important, right? It's a concentrated and sincere, genuine effort of two to determine if it's God's will that they are married. And notice I have in highlight, God's will. This is very important because the emphasis is on God's desire over my desire. Right? I hope that didn't pass your head. In courtship, the emphasis is on what God desires more than what I desire. And so even though I may like you, you may like me, you may be interested in me, I may be interested in you, that in courtship is trivial. What is the true matter, or what is the true emphasis is that God's will for us? I know we kind of like each other, and you can't have a thing for me, I can't have a thing for you. And we could see ourselves matching up, but is that God's desire? And so that's the emphasis of courtship. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12 says, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are what? Ways of death. And at this juncture, I want to distinguish two classes, especially at this particular verse. The first class is usually it's males that kind of fall in this error, but it's an error that can fall with both camps as well. And here is the error. You find a person or you see a person and you, I guess, are attracted to them by whatever reason, and you're like, wow, if I don't have them, I'll die, right? And so you look upon them and your mind is upon them daily and a lot, and you're like, man, I have to have this person, right? That is whose way? Your way. There's a way that what? Seemeth right into a man. And as you do your analysis or whatever, you're like, man, this is it, right? This person is it, right? Now, men typically fall in this error more so than women, but it still can fall on both camps, right? And so you go, you pursue, you do all you can, and that's your way. There's a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are ways of death. So you may think that it's God's will that you are married to this person, when in fact it's not God's will. But how are you going to know? That's what courtship is about. You're going to pray and talk it through and ask for counsel and advice to see if it's God's will. That's one camp. And then you have the second camp, and no less dangerous camp of persons who say, you know what? This single life, I get to do things by myself, and, it's less stressful, and, dealing with commitment is so, You know, when I'm inside my room and, you know, it's quiet, I ain't got to deal with no one talking, their pressure. I ain't got to deal with, you know what? I think it's God's will that I be single. I really think that there is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof is ways of death. There's two camps. One who really believes that it's God's will that they be married. In fact, that's not God's will. And the next camp who say, you know what? The benefits of singleness is, man, I can't. But that's your way. What if it is your will? What if it is God's will that you be married to this person? What if it is God's will that you have a family? What if it is His will? What if it's not His will that you be married? What if it's not His will that you have a family? Well, you got to figure out, and you got to ask God, Lord, genuinely now, what is your will for me? That's very important. What is your will? Now, I may have, and you know, I've talked to myself a lot of times with this. I'm like, it's sweet being single, man. Like, the benefits outweigh, like, it's so much things you don't have to worry about, right? You just, Sabbath prep is easy. All you need to do is make sure your shoes shine, make sure your clothes iron, and make sure you have food, right? You straight. That's easy. Get married and you got to make sure that one's straight, the next one's straight, the baby, that. It's like, man, it's deep, right? But I can't be on my way. I got to be on what? God's way. And I must genuinely look for the indications of His providence in that direction. And if I can see genuine indications of His providence, I must relinquish what? My way, and go for what? His way, right? All right, this one, Proverbs 19, verse 21. There are many devices in a man's heart, nevertheless the counsel of the Lord shall stand. The New Living Translation bears it out in a way that I really like. It says, you can make many plans. You know, you can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose, He will prevail. And here again, I want to distinguish two camps. You know, man, you know, we typically have this flaw. You know, you try to chase someone down and you do all you can. But at the end of the day, if that's not the one who got up for you, the Lord's purpose will prevail. I don't care how much you talk. I don't care how much you text. I don't care how much you give gifts. I don't care how much you give compliments. I don't care how much you make yourself look whatever. God's purpose is not. And if it's not His will, then I'm sorry, sir. It just ain't gonna work, right? And there's a next camp. You know, you have females, and they always no, not at this time, no, this. If it's the Lord's will that you be married to that man, it's gonna happen, right? You can't avoid it, right? It's going to happen. I'm not gonna ask for the raise of hands, but how many wives did not believe that the person who was their husband was gonna be their husband? Don't raise your hand now. Don't embarrass yourself, right? But I've heard countless stories. And I see a couple laughing now. I heard countless stories. The first time we met, she said no. The first time she was like, no. I heard even one said, no way, or, what's the next one? There's true stories, I try to remember what the person told me. They said something outrageous, like never in a million years or something like that, right? Yeah, that's what you say, right? That's what you say and what you think. But if it's the Lord's will, that no will turn into maybe, and that maybe will turn into soon, and that soon will turn into very soon, and that very soon will turn into yes, right? If it's the Lord's will. And if it's not the Lord's will, sorry, sir, you could climb every mountain, you could run through every valley, right? You could send 1 million love notes. It's not happening, right? The Lord's counsel will stand. And we should want the Lord's counsel to stand, eh? We should want God's counsel to stand. I like the message for Sabbath school that ties right into this. It's God's will. And we have to submit to what God's will is. If it's his will that you do, then yes. If it's not his will, then step back. But we have to know, and we have to genuinely ask God the question, is it your will for me to be married? And if so, who? If not, help me to understand that and help me to be satisfied with the gift of singleness. I wish we had like 5 more series just to unpack that. But when I saw it, it was like, wow, the gift of singleness. That's really true, you know. If you read Paul's writing, the gift of singleness, sometimes we underestimate that. That's actually a gift. It's a genuine gift. And some persons, God bless them with the gift of singleness. And they want to, do something else. But it's a gift. Same as the gift of marriage. It's all those things are a gift. And through and we don't want to go ahead of God, right? We want to be right in line. All right, so that's that. So courtship is the sincere effort of two to determine if it's God's will that they be married to each other. But what is the real difference, right, between courtship and dating? I'm going to outline several differences between courtship and dating. I hope I didn't say courtship and marriage. But what's the real difference between courtship and dating? The first thing that I would say is courtship is motivated by God's leading. It's very important. I'm talking about on the onset, right? It's usually not something that you plan or something that you had in your mind. It usually comes like it's like, wow, I could see God's leading. And like it was not something that you try to calculate and whatever you try to figure out by yourself. It's almost like the best way I could put it, like you can clearly see that it's God who's orchestrating, right? And it's not you punching the buttons. So courtship usually is motivated by a deep sense that, hey, I believe God is leading. I really believe that. How do you know? Well, it's different ways. But you need to ask God, okay, are you leading? And he will show you, right? There's different ways that he could show you that he's leading, right? It could be by a dream, by you, a dream by someone else. It could be by someone walking up to you and say, you know what, why don't you ever thought about this person? And you're like, you thought about it, but you never really thought about it deeply. But the person came to you and you never told them your intentions. But they came to you and they was like, you ever thought about this person? I think that, boom. Or they may say, you know what, sir or sister, you know what, I had a weird dream. I dreamed, and you're like, what? You dreamed that? Wow, that's crazy. But I never told you that. And you're like, wow. Or it may be, now you cannot trust all dreams. Let me put that disclaimer before people run around with dreams. And you cannot trust all dreams. But I'm saying you get the indications. Those are not conclusive things. That's why you enter into courtship, just still agonizing with God, trying to figure out. But at the onset, it is like you can sense a merging. You can sense that God is leading you to one another, right? You can sense it. Whatever way, how he speaks with you, whatever, you can just sense that, wow, I really believe that this is God's leading. But dating is motivated by what? Carnal desires. I like her. He likes me. He look handsome. She look pretty. Let's go, right? That's typically how dating begins. Courtship is drawn primarily by enduring character qualities. So with courtship, you ask yourself the question, what matters at 50? That's your question in courtship. When you're 50 I shouldn't say 50 because 50 for us is different. What matters at 80, right? What matters at 80? When everything physically between us is a I like the word dead, right? Like what? Wow, that's an interesting word. What matters at 80, right? When everything is, when physical features are a non-issue or trivial, right? What is going to really matter at that particular point? That's the questions you ask in courtship. Dating like, man, short-term, aesthetic, right? Drawn primarily by what? Physical, aesthetic features. That's dating, right? He has a strong, it's just physical features alone. Courtship seeks and accepts counsel from wise, God-fearing advisors. This is a major difference, right? See, with courtship, what you're trying to do is you're trying to really see, like, you don't want to be biased. And you know you could be biased. And so you ask, you know, like, what do you think about this person? You think this person would be? And you not only ask, but you listen. Because remember, you could be blind. But dating is headstrong. Dating, first of all, they don't even want you in their business. That's the first thing, right? And when you try to give them advice, they're like, you ain't know, you dated, you old lady, you outdated, you ain't know what you're talking about, right? You don't know how well he treats me, you don't know how well she treats me. But sometimes those persons who are wise and experienced, they can see things that you probably can't see. And they can tell you about it. And you're like, you see that? You really see that? I don't see that. But I'm going to listen to your advice because what? This is something that I can't mess up. So with courtship, you try to seek and you listen to the approval of wise, God-fearing counselors. You listen. Not only you seek. Because some people seek, you know, it's funny. You know you have these kind of people, right? They come for your advice. And you give them their advice. It's so funny. They come for your advice. You give them your advice, right? So let's say you said, they come to your advice. They said, Isaac, you think that I should build a basketball court in the back of my yard? You said, no, I don't think you should build a basketball court in the back of your yard. And then they said, okay, thank you for your advice. The phone is closed, right? 3 months later, Isaac, can you help me fix the basketball court that is in the back of my yard? I'm like, and I told you not to put the basketball court in the back of your yard, and now after you have problems with the basketball court that I told you not to put in the back of your yard, you come to me trying to find solutions? No, man. No, right? So you not only ask for counsel, but you accept it. They ignore it. They don't care. But we have to be very careful, right? Because the very counsel that we refuse in the early stages, you're going to come back to mommy, going to come back to pastor and say, can you help me with this marriage that you told me not to enter into? And now before they even start, you gotta first listen to their delineation of, well, before I even start to give you advice, remember, I told you so. You gotta listen to that first. You gotta brace yourself for that, right? Good. Courtship solicits affection using love alone. With courtship, you're restricted. You're restricted only to use the pure and noble avenues. You cannot use deceit. You cannot use dishonesty. You cannot use fraud in courtship. You are restricted only by love. And if the person does not respond to love, then you can't do nothing about it. You can't coerce, you can't wheel into, you can't, underhand nothing. You only could use love. But with dating, you solicit affection by any means possible, by hook or by crook, right? If you have to borrow your friend's car to make it look like you're saying something, you better do it something, right? If you have to borrow money from the bank to make it look like you starting something, you do it, right? By hook or by crook. That's dating. Courtship only seeks to be partnered with the converted. This is very important. I wish we had like whole 10 lectures just on that particular one. Only seeks partnership with those who are converted, which means that there's no discussion on courtship if you're not converted. The first thing is, how do you meet Jesus? Not courtship, right? So if you're interested in someone and you're a Seventh-day Adventist and they're not a Seventh-day Adventist, I am sorry, but based on the authority of God's word, it's a no, and it's wrong, and we need to stop acting like it's okay. It is wrong. If you are Seventh-day Adventist, you should not be marrying a Baptist. You should not be marrying a Pentecostal. You should not be marrying a Church of God. You should be marrying only Seventh-day Adventists. And I say that without no fear of controversy. It's the truth. And it needs to be said. Someone got to say it. You cannot be a Seventh-day Adventist and have a boyfriend who's a Baptist. Okay, this is the rationale. Oh, he'll come along. You ain't even you're not even supposed to have them as a boyfriend. Not even that. And persons start off saying, well, we could start this thing, we could court, even though they're not an Adventist or Seventh-day Adventist. That's wrong. No, you don't do that. Your only obligation to someone who's not a Seventh-day Adventist is to ensure that through your life they can see Jesus in you. Nothing else, nothing more. Now, when they cross that barrier, you give them some time. So not fresh out of the baptism, pool, they just fresh out of the baptism pool and you ready to put the ring on the finger. No. You give them some time. You wait it out. You give them a year. See if they're serious. You give them 2 years. See if they're really serious. See if they come to church often. See if their faith will continue to remain strong, right? See if they are still devoted to Christ after the few months after baptism, right? Because you don't want them to get baptized for you, and on the contrary, you don't want them to feel like they have to come to church because of you. You want to watch them. See if they could come to church without you even talking to them. See if they could come to church without you calling them. Notice the time that they come to church. Notice when do they come to church. Notice what they wear when they come to church. Notice how do they act in church, right? That's what you look for before or during this stage. Or before you even see courtship, right? All right, seeks, dating, we don't care. Seeks to be linked with whoever I desire. Courtship. Courtship is categorized by seriousness and deep sobriety. So during courtship, you're serious. This is not play, casual thing. You're serious. It's more head over heart, less heart over head. It's serious and deep contemplations. All right, courtship has marriage as the end goal. Dating has sexual intimacy as the end goal. Courtship, the prerequisite to enter into courtship is conversion. For dating, there's no prerequisites. Courtship is slow, patient, and discerning. We talked about that earlier. Slow, patient, discerning, because you don't want to make a quick mistake, because you usually make a mistake if you're in a rush, right? Dating is a quick, rapid, and blind. With courtship, there is no physical intimacy or romance, none at all. Because the moment you start to get physically involved, then that's when you start to get blind. You're like, wow, the way that person hold me, they have to be the one. No. See, that's when you get blind, because you mistake physical interactions for love. That's why you try to avoid all physical intimacy, because you don't want to get attracted to them and they're not the one who got out for you. You don't want to be blind by their, by the physical things that you feel with them. So no kissing, no that caressing, none of that stuff. With dating, physical intimacy or romance is eagerly participated in. With courtship, we avoid situations which may lead to sin. With dating, we seek to encourage and deliberately place ourselves in those compromising positions. You get the girl late at night, you drop her late, so that something can happen after. It's just crazy. You focus on activities in courtship, you focus on activities which are heavenly and not degrading. With dating, you focus on activities which lead to impurity. With courtship, it's done with a deep sense of community and family. So it's no secret. It's no secret. You're not hiding nothing, right? The persons in the church know, the persons in your family know exactly whom your interest is intertwined. And so they can give you counsel, and they can help you look, and they can help you discern things if they know. There's no secret. Dating is done in secret with a deep sense of privacy. Courtship is focused on really getting to know the person without bias. So you try to really understand the person. What is their temperament? What are their likes and dislikes? Like, do I really enjoy being in their society, right? Can I be in their society for 6 hours straight and don't feel the time passing? That's usually a good indicator, right? Because if you can dwell with them for so long, you could be in a house with them all day, then you could come meet them and wake up with them on the side of you, sleep with them on the side of you. If you can't be around them for 2 hours, that probably ain't the one, right? If you get frustrated with them after 5 minutes,
I probably ain't the one. You want someone who, in the passing of time, you don't even know time has passed in conversation or in dealing with that person. And you want to get to really know them. So you ask a lot of questions. Persons be like, we're in courtship, we don't know what to say. What you mean you know what to say? Ask questions. Ask a lot of questions. It may sound interrogating, but guess what? This is the rest of your life on the line, right? You need to ask questions. And ask questions that it may seem controversial, but you need to ask them. You need to figure out, right? Who's the last person you've been with? Why did that relationship did not work? And you want to ask that question. You know why you want to ask that question? Because you want to see who they put the blame on. So why did that last relationship didn't work? Well, you see, that person, so it's that person, it ain't you. All right, I got it. And if only that person would have done a better, and if only that person, so now you understand that this person plays the blame game. And so you say, you know what? It was nice, I think I have Bible study at 7 o'clock. I know I drop you here, but here's the bus, here's money for the bus. No, don't do that, right? But you want to really be careful, right? And you ask a lot of questions. How do you view money, right? How do you view parenting? You want to ask tough questions like, what if your child says to you that they feel like they are a girl trapped in a boy's body? What are you going to say? And then the person responds, well, I'll let them express themselves in bushcrack. Man, you better run. Because if that person say, well, I can let them express themselves and, it's all right, and let them be what they feel that they want to be. Do you know that legally, the person who is more for the child leaning towards the gay side, you know that the courts always, I don't care if that's your child, the courts always side with the parent that wants the child to be gay. Always. They always do. So you have a father who has a son and he wants to change his gender and to perform all these, they call them puberty blockers, to stop himself from being from experiencing puberty and to have these different, modifications done. And guess what? You as the father or as the mother, you can't call your son a boy. You must call her what? A girl. And if you do not do that, guess what? You get in trouble. And the court end up fining you. So when before in court, you need to ask these questions. Ask them hard. It may sound like interrogation room, but let them feel, listen, this is interrogation room. What is your answer to these questions? Right? Ask them deep questions. Don't be shallow, deep questions. Right? I wish I could explain more questions, but y'all may think I'm a freak by the time I finish with my questions. But I'm going to ask you, and I'm not going to let you go away. I'm going to ask you everything that I want to know. Dating focus on deep infatuation and lust. Courtship is focused on knowing and counting the cost. I want to know exactly what I'm getting myself into. Knowing and counting the cost. Dating is focusing on fleeting, sensual feelings. Courtship is focusing on building a bond and developing trust. Dating is focusing on satisfying fleshly and carnal desires. Courtship attempts to follow God's will above their desires. Dating attempts to follow their will above all else. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Courtship is categorized by lots of fasting and lots of prayer. But dating is categorized by worldly enjoyment and unholy amusement. That's the difference. So we have God's way, his better plan, versus Satan's way. And I agree with this woman in Songs of Solomon. His love, his way, his principles is better to me than that wine, that false doctrine. And so, before I end, I want to, because I did promise to say, to tackle this, the dangers of premarital intimacy, what happens, why you shouldn't sow your wild oats. I'm just going to read this one. It says, a little time spent in sowing your wild oats, dear young friends, will produce a crop that will embitter your whole life. An hour of thoughtlessness, once yielding to temptation, may turn the whole current of your life in the wrong direction. So this is a real warning against that dating thing, bouncing from one person to the next person. And I want to talk about, just briefly, because we can't really dive into it a lot, but this is something I wanted to speak about last time, but we didn't have enough time. A meet relationship principle, or a little relationship principle, and that's this. And this is why courtship is so much better. It's so much better because it's founded on this. The joy of intimacy is the reward of commitment. That's a very important relationship principle to understand. They're only going to be true joy when there's true commitment. And that's why dating, it's so fleeting and so temporary, right? It's not satisfying. You only experience true joy when there's true commitment. And God had it that intimacy only supposed to happen after there's a commitment made. And so if the person is not willing to commit, then there should be no intimacy. That's the relationship principle that we should all remember. Commitment before intimacy. We don't have enough time. I just want to talk about the red flags on the pursuit of unions. You know you're in the wrong direction if you are unequally yoked. You know you're in the wrong direction if you're unwilling to listen to godly counsel. You know you're in the wrong direction if heaven is not in your view. And you know you're in the wrong direction when you're trusting in your own wisdom. Ellen White says in Adventist Home, never should God's people venture upon forbidden ground. Marriage between believers and unbelievers is forbidden by God. But too often the unconverted heart follow its own desires, and marriages unsanctioned by God are formed. Because of this, many men and women are without hope and without God in the world. Their noble aspirations are dead by a chain of circumstances. They are held in Satan's net. Those who are ruled by passion and impulse will have a bitter harvest to reap in this life, and their course may result in the loss of their very own souls. So don't be unequally yoked. Regardless of the temptation to be unequally yoked, don't listen to that temptation. Take wise counsel. She said, trust not to your own judgment, and marry no one whom you feel will be an honor. And marry no one whom you feel will not be an honor to your father and your mother, but rather marry one who has intelligence and what? Moral worth. Let the questions be raised, so keep heaven in view. Let the questions be raised. Will this union help me heavenward? Will it increase my love for God? Will it enlarge my sphere of usefulness in this life? If these reflections present no drawback, then, in the fear of God, move forward. Heaven in view. That's the focus of courtship. Will it increase my love for God? Will this person help me on the heavenward journey? Can I genuinely cultivate good Christian faith and character with this person alongside of me? Or will they continually be a snare? And finally, if men and women are in the habit of praying twice a day before they contemplate marriage, they should pray 4 times a day when such a step is anticipated. Marriage is something that will influence and affect your life both in this world and in the world to come. A sincere Christian will not advance his plans in this direction without the knowledge that God approves his course. Let us, the young lovers, page 39, paragraph 3. So you want to pray. You want to pray. You want to pray. You want to seek God's guidance. Asking these important questions. Will this union help me heavenward? Will it increase my love for God? Will it enlarge my sphere of usefulness? Can through this relation I be a better Christian? I can be better able to serve others. Will this union help me heavenward? And if, as you think about these things and you pray about these things, there are no drawbacks, then, in the fear of God, move forward. And so with that, I end with those comments. And hopefully, as we consider these things for those who are at this stage, or for those who are already in it, because courtship's supposed to last throughout marriage. I didn't put that quote in, but she said it. As we consider these things, as we look at these things, may we continue to pray. Pray for those who are in decision-making time, and pray for those who are already in it.